Okay, so something really unique is happening with the end of the ranked season this year, which is it's never ended in the middle of the holiday season like this before. We used to have preseason, and so ranked would end around November 11th, well before Thanksgiving, and you would have Thanksgiving and Christmas just during the middle of the preseason. And so the preseason wasn't only there as a break from ranked that potentially discouraged players from coming back to the game and broke their daily habits of continuing to play ranked. And so, Riot wanted to do away with it because they felt like that was bad for their player retention, bad for the game. But that may be true. But another issue that they probably didn't think too much about is that it also prevented the ranked season and the split from ending right in the middle of the holidays. And technically, the ranked season ends on January 7th. So it's not like in the middle of Christmas or something like that. But I'll explain why it still has a big impact and is still quite a big issue in a second. So there's a couple of implications from this. Number one, since the ranked season ends on January 7th, I'm going to start with stuff that affects all ranks, and then I'll get into some high elo problems, which are particularly pronounced. One thing that's very different is that if you're in high school or below, and you're on holiday, you're on your Christmas vacation or whatever, you're probably going to love that it ends on January 7th because you're going to be off most of that time from school. And so you're going to get to play, for a huge amount of time during the end of the season in a way that you probably wouldn't have gotten to before if it was ending in the middle of the school year on November 7th or 11th or something like that. So that's actually something that those players are going to really enjoy. However, for most players, and I think League is getting an older and older audience, I think most players are not in high school or below. For most players, having to play with a bunch of people who are in high school and below more than normal is actually kind of a negative, both in terms of like immaturity, toxicity, and just in general, like people coming back to the game for the end of the season, but also especially kids who haven't really played much throughout the year. So there's a lot of people who are focused on school throughout the year and they don't really play, but then they're drawn back by the end of the season while they're on a break and they start playing again and they're completely washed up. They're completely rusty and they're coming back and they're getting into people's most serious games where they're trying to get to their ranked goals by the end of the season. And that feels really frustrating. So I think a lot of people have certain preferences on what time they like to play, what days they like to play. And I've heard from a lot of people talking about this, that people sometimes don't like to play on the weekend because kids are off of school and it kind of sucks. So there's definitely different schools of thought on this. I actually like playing on the weekend because I generally think the more people playing the game, the better for matchmaking quality and for game quality. So I actually think playing on the weekend is better. I also prefer playing, at like maybe 6 p.m. in terms of time of day to about midnight, rather than playing. If I play at like 3 p.m., it can be a little bit dicey because you're probably almost exclusively playing with kids who are home from school, but not a lot of people off of work yet. Or if you play earlier in the day, completely different demographic. You're mostly going to be playing against college kids who have classes at many different times throughout the day, or people who are like, I don't know, unemployed or like no lifing the game. So, very different demographics. And so, that time slot from maybe like 11 in the morning until like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, where you're playing with mostly college kids and stuff like that, not too bad. The 3 in the afternoon to 6 p.m., don't like it. 6 p.m. to midnight, peak hours, everything's great. And then, of course, we don't talk about after midnight. After midnight, you may already know it as China o'clock if you're here in NA. Lots of win trading going on past midnight, lots of shenanigans, not a lot of people playing the game, very low player base, very low quality matchmaking. The games are just higher variance, and it makes it harder to carry games. It makes the games less consistent, and if you're used to relying on your teammates at a certain level, which everyone is, no matter what rank you are, you do rely on your teammates to a certain level. And, it's just the higher up you go, the more you can expect that. But then at 3 a.m, the shift is wild, then like your expectations are just out the window. And if you're not good at adapting your expectations, lowering your expectations, playing at 3 a.m. is not a good experience. So this is kind of like that, because we're getting more people because people are off of their vacation, but we're also getting more people who maybe some groups of people don't want to play with as much, or maybe other people don't mind. So that's, the thing that would affect most ranks is, hey, I want to, grind before the end of the season, and I'm already off of school or I'm already off of work, and this is great. Or on the other hand, I'm busy for Thanksgiving and I'm busy for Christmas. Now I can't grind at the end of the season the way that I could before. So this sucks, because now even my free time that I have on these days, after, what would have been time that I would have been working or in school, now even my free time, it's like I'm spending time with my family. I'm not going to be playing on the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 25th of December. So, what's going on? We can't even play during this time. So I think this was an unforeseen consequence of getting rid of preseason, is that the season is now ending in January 7th, which is kind of like very close to Christmas and time when people really can't play as much probably as they'd like to. And I think that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and Riot probably doesn't like that either. So I think I have a solution here, and then we'll get into some high elo problems. I think that they could just change the date, because we're moving back from 3 splits a year to 1 split a year in 2025. Just change the date. Just have the season end in November and then start the next season. In November, just like you did before. The only difference would be that rather than, patch 15.1 coming in January, patch 15.1 would be coming in November. It wouldn't make any difference to anybody. In fact, Riot would probably enjoy the shorter season a little bit better, because I think that there was maybe a middle ground between going all the way back to 1 season a year, even though I personally like that a lot. I think that Riot didn't like that. They wanted 3 splits a year to work. They wanted 2 splits a year to work. So just, you'll get for 1 year until you're on that track again. That would also shorten season 15 to, only 8 or 9 months instead of a whole year. And that would be closer to what they were looking for with 2 splits a year or 3 splits a year. So they might actually like to do something like that. And I wouldn't even have a problem as someone who really wants the season to be as long as possible and there to be as few resets as possible, so I can finally climb. I wouldn't mind that at all. I don't think that 1 month or 2 months shaved off of the end of the season makes much of a difference in terms of the length. And I think if it means that the season is not ending during the holidays, that would be way better. So on to high elo. Having to play decay games during Thanksgiving and Christmas is a completely brain rotted, stupid system to have in place, because nobody is going to what are you going to do? You're not going to let your account decay if you're sitting in GM or Masters or Challenger, but you don't want to have to go and play an hour of League when family is over for Christmas. So this just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I feel like they got rid of preseason thinking, oh, wow, this is a good idea. And then nobody caught on to the fact hey, this means that for the first time ever, the season is going to end in January or December instead of ending back in November, because we're not getting that 2 or 3 month window or break anymore. And that is just a disaster, because forcing thousands of players in Master Plus to play a game every single day over the holiday season is just a complete disaster. And on top of that, like I said, people who are wanting to do their big grind to try to get to their ranked goal, GM or Challenger or whatever, even to get to Masters from Diamond, people who are trying to do that at the end of the season, all of a sudden it's okay, I'm busy spending a bunch of time with family. I can't even do that. And again, maybe you can do that after Christmas is over. So let's say people are gone the 28th, the 29th, the 30th or something like that. So maybe you can get your games in between the 30th and January 7th, because the season doesn't end until January 7th. But in high elo, because you can bank 2 weeks of decay, the season in practice really ends around December 24th. And the reason for that is because December 24th is 2 weeks before January 7th. And so what that means is that if you've got your 14, games played very recently, then you'll have 2 weeks of not decaying. And so what's going to happen is that a lot of people, what they traditionally do is if they've gotten to the rank they want to get to, if they're in Masters and you've got 2 weeks banked and the season is ending in 2 weeks or less, there's no reason to queue up at all. The only thing that could happen is you could lose Masters, so just don't play. So what a lot of people do is they camp their spot, and there's no incentive or reason for Master players to play, or for 90% of GM or Challenger players to play, only the 10% that are low enough LP that they're close to the threshold of getting bumped to the lower rank. So what that means is that game quality is terrible, like we talked about with playing at 3 a.m, because all of a sudden, not only are you having to potentially play decay games through the holidays, but you're also having this situation where if you wait to play your games until after December 24th to try to get to the rank you're trying to get to, or you need to play after that point, there aren't going to be very many people queuing up. So the game quality and the matchmaking is way, way worse. And then on top of that, you have a lot of win trading going on, because the most win trading happens at the end of the season on the thresholds between, Masters and Diamond, between GM and Masters, and between Challenger and GM. That's where the most win trading is going on, because those are the people who need to make sure that they win their game in order to ensure that they keep the rank that they are going to try to end at. And so it's just a complete unmitigated disaster to try to play in high elo like Masters Plus, even High Diamond Plus, in the last 2 weeks of the season. Feels really, really bad. It's like, I would not recommend it to anyone if you don't have to do it. Because there's just not enough people queuing up. The matchmaking quality is terrible, and there's too much win trading going on. To make matters worse with win trading, if you're not win trading, then there are 5 people on the enemy team who could potentially be receiving a win, and only 4 people on your team who could potentially be win trading and receiving a win. So in kind of like a reverse, people use this example for if people are AFKing or trolling a game. If you're not doing it, then you have a better chance of it happening on the other team. It's like a reverse of that scenario, where actually you're more likely to lose because of win trading than you are to gain from win trading. If you're not a win trader, it's going to hurt you at the end of the season, and you'd be surprised how many games it's happening in. There's also, and I think Riot really needs to do something about this, 3-way win trading is really, really bad, because with just a 1-for-1 win trading, they're ruining games, and they're making games very hard to carry in high variance, because somebody's trying to intentionally tip the outcome of the game one direction. But 3-way win trading does happen, and it's really, really bad, because with 3-way win trading, if you have 3 people who are about the same high elo as each other, they're going to queue up at the same time on Discord, make sure that they accept at the same time. And then when they all get into a match, 2 of them are going to be on one team and 1 of them's going to be on the other team, always, because there's 3 people. 2 have to be on one team, 1 has to be on the other. The person who is the 1 will always lose the game, and the people who are as 2 on the other team are going to win, and the group is going to net gain LP for that win, because if one person gained 20, the other person lost 20, but the third person gained 20, that group is generating plus 20 LP for themselves every time this happens. And so they will continue to do that over and over again until all 3 of them are much higher rank than they should be. And they can get inflated because of that. And I think that that's obviously really, really, really bad. So Riot needs to figure out how to do something about that kind of win trading, because I know that it's hard to detect in game, because people are very good at hiding the fact that they're trying to lose the game. Win trading doesn't look like somebody running it down and dying 10 times. Usually that's somebody having a bad game, or like actually trolling and running it down. Usually win trading takes the form of, like, I'm subtly not playing in these fights, or I'm going to accidentally get picked right before Baron spawns and things like that. And it's just way too hard to pick up on, because the person can play almost totally normally aside from that. And any kind of automated system to ban players like that would just ban innocent players all the time. And so it can be very, very difficult to detect, but they need to do something about it, because it's a major, major problem. And, seeing it happen throughout the season, but especially at the end of the season, it's so bad how prevalent it is. So, that's about all there is to it. I think that removing preseason was probably a good idea, but it was a bit of an oversight to continue to let the season end right, at the beginning of January or so, rather than not having it end in the middle of the holidays. They could have it, end, for example, the end of January. They could have it end, because normally the season also used to start like the end of January, maybe January 28th or something. So they could just have the season end January 28th in the future. That way, the season's going on during the holidays, but then people can, people can have time after the holidays to finish their climb. Or have it end before the holidays, like early November, like we've seen before, like November 11th. And that way people are finishing up their climb before the holidays end. So good luck in solo queue, and have a wonderful day. And let me know what you think.